Hey, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the All Burgundy and Gold Everything podcast powered by Urban Sports Scene and Fox Sports Radio 96.9 FM and 1340 AM, Hopewell, Virginia. I'm Glenn, joined by the homie Mo. Ray and Wole is out. Mo, what's going on with you, brother?
Ain't much, man. A lot of news coming out of Commander Land, so let's dive in it.
A lot of news coming out of Commander Land. And by now, if you're listening to this podcast, you already know that Ron Rivera has been relieved of his duties from the Washington Commanders. He is no longer the Washington Commanders head coach. After 4 years and a 26-40-1 record, Ron Rivera has been relieved of his duties. Josh Harris already mentioned that they've got a team together. They're going to look for a football operations guy, and then a football operation guy is going to hire the head coach. So they've been looking for that. But before we get into all that, that's what's on tap for today. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play. Just search All Burgundy and Gold Everything. Also tweet us at ABG_everything. Hit us up on IG at ABG_everything and like our All Burgundy and Gold Everything Facebook page. Mo, let's hop into it. The Washington Commanders are in a search for a new leader of the organization. As far as football operation wise, they want to be elite again. As Josh Harris mentioned, as he mentioned to the players, he's taking full ownership of the team not being successful this year. Do you think that's part of a great leader by him taking full ownership, knowing that he only took the team over in July?
I mean, that's great leadership. It's the start of a lot of good things to come for the franchise. It's been some low years on the field, and especially with all the turmoil with the old regime and the old owner. I don't even want to utter his name and give some people PTSD around here. So I think that it's a step in the right direction, and by hiring the likes of Bob Myers, and I forget the name of the other guy that was hired with Bob Myers.
Spellman.
Spellman. Is it Rick
Spillman, yeah.
Spielman from Minnesota, right? Rick
Yeah,
Spielman from Minnesota.
Spillman from Minnesota.
Rick Spielman from Minnesota and Bob Myers, although Bob Myers has a basketball background, he's putting people in positions to help him have a fair and equitable search for his GM and his head coach for the future. And hopefully, with multiple people that have been in these seats and in these meetings, they can do their due diligence and weed through the long list of candidates for both head coach and GM until they find the appropriate figure and then work their way down. So there's new ownership. I believe they're going to name a GM first in the proper order and then find a head coach that matches the philosophy and the way that they want a team ran, so that there's some unity and there's some synchronization over here or in Commander Land. So I think it's a step in the right direction so far.
Yeah, I think so too. I think the team that he's assembling together, along with Magic Johnson and some his other business partners, they assembled a team. They put in good people in place. Bob Myers put in space. We know what he did with the Golden State Warriors. It's been talked about, right? He is a basketball guy, but I think even if though he's been a basketball guy, you can sometimes spot talent and character, right? And I know somebody saying, "Oh, he brought Draymond Green in," but when he brought Draymond Green in, Draymond Green isn't the Draymond Green that you see right now, right? Totally different type of dude, totally different guy. But he's also brought Kevin Durant, and he also had this team a winning franchise. Remember, see, people from this new generation don't remember when the Golden State Warriors was the laughing stock of the NBA.
Absolutely.
They used to be the laughing stock of the league, losing streak. Nobody wanted to go to the Golden State Warriors after you had Tim Hardaway, Chris Mullin, and all those guys
Run
leave.
TMC.
Run TMC. Golden State went downhill. So, and so that they had to rebuild that franchise. I even talk about Minnesota with Spielman, right? Rick Spielman being in Minnesota, things that he put together, put in place in Minnesota to take that franchise a little bit to another level. And I like how you have a basketball guy, football guy, and some other people, some business people who are able to have a model of success and know what it takes to have a winning organization. But all these guys are analytical guys. And that's what it is. They're looking at analytics. They're looking at the analytics of this coaching staff, who will be best fit, what they're trying to do. Do you believe in analytics, or do you believe that it should be the old-fashioned way? And I know we're in a new day and age.
I think in 2023, it's hard to ignore analytics. I think you take all the data but you also use your eye test, right? As you said, they got two guys that have been in positions that can really gauge the, what am I trying to say here? That can really vet go through the process of vetting a coach and a GM that would fit what this organization wants to do. It seems like Washington is finally operating as the multi-billion-dollar organization that it is and it is worth. So it's a sign in the right direction, if you ask me. I think that with his success in the NBA of having a perennial playoff team and a team that's in contention and having a superstar and bringing superstars along draft wise and whatnot, I think it's the start of something new, and start of something great over here.
I think so too. And they're going to say, as they mentioned, he's going to start with the player football operation person. And this is what we have so far. We're going to talk about each one of these on the show tonight. The head of football operations, some of the guys who are going to be in charge of steering the ship. One thing Josh Harris said in his press conference when he met with the team, or his press conference to the media on Monday, was that this is going to be a thorough process, but it's going to be a quick process as well, right? It's going to be thorough but quick. And we talk about quick. It has been a quick process. Josh Harris has interviewed interviewed 6 guys already, right? Five guys at the time we record this. One guy is waiting for an interview, and that is Cowboys VP of Player Personnel, Will McClay. Has not been interviewed by Josh Harris as of yet. But let's go through this real quick. Bears assistant GM Ian Cunningham, Washington Commanders. Josh Harris met with him on today. Browns AG Glenn Cook interviewed with the Washington Commanders on Tuesday. Uh, Chiefs AG assistant general manager Mike Barzanga interviewed with the Washington on Tuesday. 49ers and front runner, most people say, 49ers assistant general manager Adam Peters interviewed the Washington interview with Josh Harris and his group on Tuesday, and then Eagles Alec Hallaby interviewed at Josh Harris's house today on the 10th. Mo, you got all these guys, right? Bears GM, Browns GM, Chiefs, 49ers, Eagles, Cowboys later on in the week. Who, in your opinion, is the best for this Washington Commanders job?
Um, you know, Most people don't know about assistant GMs and what they do, but they do a lot of the legwork for the actual GM along the way. So that's why their experience is coveted. And a lot of times, guys that are assistant GMs become GMs for new teams because they had a lot to do with drafts and the allocation of players and resources for their old team. So looking at the list, I would start off with the teams that have the highest pedigree. I think that's why Adam Peters is the front runner right now. What San Francisco has built over the last couple of years. We know that there was a high power team when Jim Harbaugh had them. Then they had a couple of they had a lull period, and then with the with the with the acquisition of John Lynch as the GM and bringing in Kyle Shanahan, they've they've flipped that roster and had one of the most formidable rosters in the league. So we'll start there with them. Of course, I think is it Halliburton? Haller from the
Hallaby.
Philadelphia.
Yeah,
Hallaby.
Alec
Ha-
Hallaby.
I think Hallaby is another one, especially when you can get somebody from a contender in your division and you can bring that kind of mindset over to your team. And we see what Philadelphia has done over the last couple of years in terms of the players that they have on their team. Also, um, arguably a top 3 roster in the entire league. And Mike Borganzi from the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yep.
I think those three, just because of the pedigree of their team and their performance now, and when we see those rosters stack up as, should be the favorites. Peters, especially with the 49ers collection of talent and how John Lynch and company have gone about acquiring their talent. More importantly, look at the success of Brock Purdy over the course of the last 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
how they go about assessing talent all the way down to the 7th round. We got Brock Purdy, who was in the MVP conversation up till about 2 weeks ago, who was Mr. Irrelevant in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a lot of traction there because a lot of people want that stability. They want that They want that stability. They want that kind of roster configuration here in Washington, so that they can wipe away the days of old where a lot of players were getting a lot of money around here for not performing. So I'm gonna go with the front runner that we've read about for a day or two now with Peters, because of just how the 49ers assembled. If we look at them over the last 3 years, is is hard not to say they've had the best roster in the NFL over the course of the last 4 years, and they just keep adding to it.
Yeah, and not mention some of the moves that they made. The move they made with Carolina to get Christian McCaffrey over to San Francisco. They're not willing to. They are willing to make moves. They're willing to make changes. They're willing to do different things. Look at we talk about Philadelphia, right? Look how
Mm-hmm.
Philadelphia rebuilt their roster with all the picks they were getting rid of players and getting draft picks, and rebuilt their organization through the draft. And that's one of the things that I like about Alec Hullaby, excuse me. And he's from a Harvard grad, but he's been with that system, been with the Philadelphia Eagles for about 16 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one thing about that, he's been through the ups and downs of the organization with the Philadelphia Eagles, and he was been able to move that situation and move them along, uh, and served in different roles. But again, understand player personnel, understand who they need in the house, understand the culture, and creating the culture. I think the culture of the Washington Commanders should be dictated not only by the head football coach, but also the head football operations person as well, and the general manager, when they get one, should be meeting together and begin to do those things and create the culture. Culture comes from the head up, comes from the
Mm-hmm.
top down, right? If you have an owner who doesn't take any stuff, an owner that has respect and who's respected throughout the league, an owner who has set the standard, that the standard is winning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look at the teams that you talked about, and when they were their candidates are, they are winning teams. There's a standard when you step into the Kansas City Chiefs organization. There's a standard when you talk to the Philadelphia Eagles, or when you enter the Philadelphia organization, or you're drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles. It is a standard
In San Francisco.
in San Francisco, right? There's a standard that's there, regardless of who's the coach, who misses, who plays, who the starting quarterback is. There's a standard. What has happened in Washington has not been a standard in a long time, and so you bring a head of football operations person in who can establish a standard, who can establish a GM having a standard, and they can move that down to the coach having a standard as well, and then everybody wins. Adam Peters is the sexy choice right now. Everybody's looking at him. If he could make it, that would be great for the organization. But you got to ask yourself and question, what can he do to keep the fan base, and what can they do to keep the fan base? Because there's a lot to talk about, right? The
Mm-hmm.
next football operation guy has to be a smart guy, because the Washington Commanders have 5 picks. You have 5 picks in the first 3 rounds, right? You have picks throughout the round. Throughout the rounds, you have the first pick. You got the number 2 overall pick. You got 2 picks to the second round. 36th and the 41st pick. And
Mm-hmm.
then you get 2 more picks in the third round, the conditional pick that you got from Chase Young. And then there's one more into your own regular pick in the third round. This is what the organization has to be talking about. And you have to put guys in place to not only be able to talk about what's going on, but move quickly, right? The
Right.
NFL moves at a quick pace. Combine is not nothing but a couple weeks away. And
Mm-hmm.
so you have to be able to do that, because you're looking at players, trying to get players in. And as I think you said on the last show or the pod, on the end, you don't want to mess this up.
You do not want to start a rebuild with a bad draft, especially when you have this number of draft picks. Everyone drafted this year has to be a contributor. Has to be a
Mm-hmm.
contributor. We're not talking about special teams players. We're talking about in the rotation, playing
Mm-hmm.
valuable minutes, either adding depth or close to being a starter or a starter. I think if you can get some of that on this roster and fill some of these gaps, I think the turnaround will be a lot faster than people expect. Um,
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that you got to create the house of competition, right? You got to create competition in the house. People said that 60 or 70% of this roster would turn over. Well, good. If it does turn over and they do leave, you have to bring competitive people in, right? Who are pushing folks in practice, who are pushing players on specialty, who are fighting for positions, who are not just happy to be a Washington Commander, who's not just happy
mhm.
to be in town or to collect the paycheck. But these people are fighting to change the culture of this organization. They're fighting to change the program. They're fighting to keep the name for itself, and that's what was missing and that's where you have to have that football operation guy to come in and push and make sure that that standard is carried out
I
through
think it
cross.
all comes down to accountability, right? I
Hmm.
think once you hire the football operations guy, the GM is in place. Everybody knows what the standard is going forward and what they're aspiring to, and you hold everybody accountable. Get the turnaround of the roster that is estimated at 60 to 70%.
Hmm.
Good. It's a lot of filth on this team that does not need to come back.
Yeah,
Right? Does not need to come back because of the lack of effort that was seen on the football field. And as you said, it all comes down to winning. It all comes down to winning. The product on the football field
yeah.
being highly efficient, being competitive,
Hmm.
win or loss, tightly contested games rather than what we've seen this year in terms of a handful of blowouts off the top of my head.
Right.
A Thursday nighter versus the Chicago Bears that had everybody up.
Ready to fire everybody, right?
I'm trying. Everybody had to go after that game.
Everybody had to go after. Everybody had to go after that game.
We talk about the Cowboys game. We're talking about both the Cowboys games got real ugly. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
some bad
And,
losses. The
and the worst one
Buffalo
was
game with the
the
turnovers.
yeah, and the worst one, the Cowboy game was on Thanksgiving because the world was watching right
The
after turn.
entire world was in one place watching the only thing on TV.
Yeah. So
Indeed. So accountability is going to be a big thing for this new regime, and I'm looking forward to seeing who they choose and the vision for the team, so that we can have more to discuss this offseason.
yeah, I'm really like I said, that's the biggest step right now. The first step is that who did they choose to be the head of football operations, and who he's going to choose to be the head coach of this football team. And some of the list, the major list of people, guys who talk about being head coaches of this Washington Commanders team, a number one name at the list is Jim Harbaugh, right?
Hmm.
His name is Jim Harbaugh's name is the number one at the number one on top of the list. He just won a national championship with the University of Michigan. Another name I'm not sure if he goes up there or not. He ended his career at the University of Alabama today,
Hmm.
and that's Nick Saban at 72. I don't know if he's just ending college and wants to go pros, but his name could be out there for
That's
uh,
going to ring some bells tomorrow.
for at least an interview or position if he decides it, if he declares it. If he doesn't want it, it's fine. But again, he's available as of right now, right? So he's available for that. But again, back to some of the names that was on his list. You also had Ben Johnson, right? Ben Johnson is one of those names that everybody has talked about. The Detroit Lions offensive coordinator, right? He has
Mhm.
done a lot for the offense. The excuse me, the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions have changed their offensive scheme, the way they do things, right? He kind of revitalized Jared Goff's career,
Indeed,
right?
indeed, indeed. And what else could Commanders fans want but solid play calling to go along with solid quarterback play?
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So, yeah,
And we'll stay in the Lion family there. Aaron Glenn, defensive coordinator there for the Lions, is also going to get an interview slot and an interview spot to interview with the Washington Commanders. Like what Aaron done with the defense over there in Commander, but when you have Hutchinson, it makes things a little bit easier, right?
easier, of course, of course.
When
I
you
had
have Aiden
a
Hutchinson, go ahead.
I have a peculiar thought about who the coach should be. Um, I feel like the head coach should be an offensive minded coach for this
Mm-hmm.
reason and this reason only. If you go with a defensive minded coach and you place an OC in there, if the OC has any kind of success, that OC is going to be up within the next 2 or 3 years for a head coaching job. So it's going to be a transition once again in about 2 to 3 years, right? But if you go with a offensive minded coach and they're successful on offense, it's easier to retain him because he's not looking to go anywhere else,
Right,
right?
right.
He's
Mm-hmm.
not looking to go anywhere else. But I think that this pool of coaches is flooded with defensive minded coaches, defensive coordinators, which would bode well for this team because I feel that most of the assets on this team are on the defensive side. You got the Alabama wall in the middle. That's
Mm-hmm.
two out of the three top paid players on this team, excluding Terry McLaurin, who's the second. So you have number one and number three right there with the Alabama wall. You
Mm-hmm.
have former first round draft pick in Jamin Davis in his last year of his rookie deal because I don't think his option will be picked up. Um, Last year's number one overall pick was Emmanuel Forbes, and the second round draft pick was also on the defensive side with
Hmm.
Quay Martin. So I think a lot more of the assets are on the defensive side that are going to be around for a longer period of time. So I could understand why the defensive coach would probably be the most appealing right now. But I think that you ensure a lot more security and longevity with your head coach if he's an offensive minded coach, because he's probably going to be paired with a quarterback, or because he's calling the plays, he has no interest in going anywhere else.
Right, and again, if you were Washington Commanders who want to win now, you stay with the offensive guy. You stay with the offensive guy, and I think that is one of the things that they may not do. And as you mentioned, there are a lot of defensive guys here. Another one is Raheem Morse. Raheem
Hmm.
Morse, has
Former
been in
head
his
coach.
organization, former head coach down in Tampa. He is a DC, which may seem like he want to get another opportunity into his head coaching realm. So the Washington Commanders are looking at interviewing him. Another
Mhm.
name that's been rumored right up to 95, right up 95 has
Mike
been the head
McDonald.
coach and assistant. Yep, Anthony McDonald as well, the defensive coordinator Mike McDonald. But the one that's really been talked about has been Anthony Weaver, right? Anthony Weaver, the for the Washington Commanders. For the Washington, be interviewed by the Washington Commanders. Anthony Weaver and Mike McDonald, both are up 95s, coming from the Ravens nest,
Right.
up in 95. Your
And,
thoughts on Ravens getting someone that's so close?
and they're coming from good pedigree, right? They're coming from a good pedigree. You're talking about the former leadership of Ozzie Newsome to the new GM, where Ozzie Newsome still is in communication and he's still operating with the franchise, right? And helping
Right.
lead this ship. You're talking about guys that have been with a head coach that have been with a team for a long period of time. They've seen it over and
Mhm.
over, right? Like on a yearly basis of consistency, the model of consistency. Um, and if they could bring some of that Baltimore magic here to DC, I think it'd be what everybody wants, right? Because they're always solid on defense, right? They draft very, very well. They draft very, very well.
Very well.
Um,
They do.
their team has a lot of depth, always has a lot of depth, and they lead on the defensive side of the football, which we know wins championships, right? Which we know wins championships. I believe that Lamar is enjoying probably the second best year of his career this year.
Oh
Even with
yeah,
all the injuries on, yeah, even with all
by
the
far.
injuries on his offense, right? So I'm more so leaning towards the defensive coordinator from the Baltimore Ravens than the offensive coordinator, because I just think Lamar Jackson is that special that he makes anybody's job that easy on offense. That's just my personal opinion. But seeing what Mike McDonald has done with the tools that they've given him, and Baltimore essentially won the triple crown of defense this year in terms of points scored per game, turnovers, and I believe it was sacks. They were number
Mm.
one in all three of those categories. I see this defense being the strong suit of this team because of the guys on the defensive side, and bringing a guy like that with that kind of pedigree and used to a certain level of play, I think could get the best out of the Commanders this year.
Yeah, I think so too. I think you're looking for those guys, as you mentioned, defensive minded coaches that can motivate the defense. Because again, offense. If and my thing, and I think I said it when Wole was here. If you get a defense, if you're going to go defensive coach, then go ahead and keep Eric Bieniemy as your OC, right?
Keep some
Keep him,
consistency and some continuity
keep,
somewhere.
yeah, keep some consistency, some continuity in the house. Keep some involved. And again, you want the people to be involved. You want coaches. You want guys. If you want to keep EB there, if you do, you don't. Then you got to bring in an offensive coordinator too, because the DC ain't gonna call both offense and defense, right? The
Mhm.
defense is gonna be able to have somebody come in there and do offense. So like, let's see, like if you're the Texans OC Bobby Slowick, right? You Bobby, offense. I know a little bit of defense because when Bobby has been did studied both sides of the football, but to me, to alleviate some issues and some pains, as a coach, if you're OC, be the OC. Bring in a guy who is your disciplinarian, your structure, your DC, who can watch games, who can break down to, who can sit with kids and communicate to them. That is how you do it. You don't bring in two OCs or you bring in OC. You start on the offensive side of the ball. To me, I
Hmm.
think you start on the offensive side of the ball. Um,
So,
with this team, you have to start on the defensive side of the ball, but your offense has been scoring points, and that's why I say it's very important that whoever is hired, right, unless Eric Bieniemy gets his other job or get another job, you keep EB around.
and
But
I think the fan base just wants a clean slate, and that's why a lot of people are against that. But I think in football sense, it makes a lot of sense. Continuity is king. Um,
yes,
You're going to bring in possibly another quarterback. Sam Howell should be better in the second year in the offense because he didn't get that opportunity the first year because he had to switch offenses and learn a new one. You know, he's built some kind of rapport with Terry towards the end of the year, which most of us wanted to see at the beginning of the year.
hmm
Brian Robinson Jr. is another key asset on offense. Shoring up between the tackles on the offensive line will probably help him. So there's pieces here. There's pieces here. There's some question marks at quarterback.
hmm
But once the GM is hired and once the head coach is here, they know the plan. We would have a better scope of what that's going to look like. And then you have $90 million in free agency to bolster this team however you see fit. And we know about those 5 draft picks in the top 100. And hopefully that accumulation of talent coming in with a big turnaround should spark a lot more success than we saw this past season.
what should a turnaround be? How do you measure the success for this organization when you talk about measuring success or a team organization turning around? How can the Washington Commander organization in this offseason begin to measure success?
See, I'm a realist. I believe in incremental success. I feel like it builds the culture of a franchise.
Hmm
Um, for instance, I like what the Titans have done since they drafted Mariota. They were the second overall pick, right, with
Yep.
Mariota. And then, like 3 years later, they were like in the division. They made it to the playoffs one year. Then they made it to the divisional. Then they made it to the
Mhm.
AFC Championship. And then
Right.
after that, they were just a perennial playoff team, right, with under Mike Vrabel, constantly in the hunt for the division. Something for fans to root for. You know, like no crazy drop offs, consistent play. There's an identity of what kind of football they want to play.
That's it. Right there.
I think that's a big thing that the Washington Commanders need to figure out. What kind of football do they want to play, so that it looks the same every week. It looks the same every week, and everybody knows what kind. You know, everybody knows what the team is made up of, the DNA of the team, so that so that play calling is in question every week on sports radio, so that we're not double guessing why they did this and why they did that, and trying to make sense of things like that. So I like gradual buildups. I think anything around won 4 games this year, something like 7-10 next year,
Yep.
like 9-8 or 10-7 the following year, contending to win the division in the third year of a head coach, which we all know is the year for most head coaches before teams start thinking about putting them on hot seats and changing things around. But seeing just a gradual incline and just some quality football, even if you're 7-10, but it was a highly contested game in about 3 of those 10 losses where it could have been any other way. It could have been any other way. You could have went 10 and
Right.
7 or 7-10. I think fans take that as long as they don't see what they see on Thanksgiving Day. They don't see what they saw against the Chicago Bears on Thursday night football one night. They don't see what they saw against the Cowboys the other day, where it just looked like a team quit on national TV.
Yeah. But fans want to see what successful is, right? They want to see the instant gratification of this team or this organization getting some small wins, not the big ones. The small wins are what being is going to be fundamental. The small ones are what's going to be important. That's what this team needs to do. And what you mentioned too, setting the structure, having a structure in place, knowing that this is what takes place in this house. This is what takes place in our organization. We ain't leaking information. Being able to establish, right, the rulings of being a Washington Commanders from an administrative perspective. They got to be able to manage, right, and be able to manage players because there's gonna be new players coming in that don't know the culture,
Mm-hmm.
right? We talked about the turnover players. There's gonna be new players coming in that don't know the culture. There's gonna be new players that are gonna have to learn and to adapt. It's not like you walking in New England and you see all those Super Bowl trophies sitting
Mm-hmm.
there at the beginning, right? And so you not like when you walking into the Cowboys again and seeing all the trophies. The new head coach and the new GM are gonna have to work together. They're gonna have to build this organization right from the draft picks, which from the number 2 draft picks to all the guys in free agency. They will have to be able to fill this team, be it learn how to communicate with others, and try to move in the right direction.
High character guys,
Hi,
good athletes, and
yeah,
talented guys. You
but,
know
but,
what I mean?
but I'd be like, well, Lay, I don't care about their character. Can they be there? Can they play football? Do they
I,
do they have the L? Can they do they
that,
have the L in that dog? If you have all three, great, right? If you have a high character guy, you're a leader, and you're a dog. Take that. If you're just a high character guy, but you're not a leader or not a dog, you might be. But
understood, Glenn. I understood, but talent is assumed that you bringing in. For me, at least,
mm-hmm,
I'm assuming that they're bringing in talented people.
right.
So that's why I led with high character. But talent is the most important thing. Can you play football? Can you play football? And
That's
are you
it.
willing? Are you willing to represent this franchise with the name on the front rather than the name on the back?
That's the key right there. Are you willing to do it for the Washington Commanders organization, right? Or are you doing it for your selfish greed, for your own gain, to line your own pockets, get all your bonuses, your incentives, or are you doing it to make this team not only a household name, but a place that people want to be?
You see, that's why character matters. You know what I mean? Talent is king, but that's why character matters. That's what's gonna propel this team to the next place. Like get more Terry McLaurins in here, more guys like that, right? More
Got
guys like Terry who are willing to put it all on the line for this franchise for a win, week in and week out. And the Commanders will be just fine. It's going to start with this GM search, and we'll know soon. So
Yeah, definitely
looking
know
forward to that.
soon. Looking forward to that. Looking for the head coach's jobs to come in. Oh, more people to be interviewed. EB has an opportunity, and Josh Harris is open to listen to him. Don't know if that when that interview has happened or if it's happened yet. So he's happy to be listening to him and see where things go. But again, the ownership group has a lot to work to do. The head of football operations is very important for
Mhm.
for the success of this Washington Commanders football team,
Speaking
right?
of EB, right? Speaking of EB, we talked about Mike Borganzi,
Mm-hmm.
him being a candidate that's already been interviewed. Do we know anything about the relationship between him and EB, and if that's something that could be a match?
That could be a match coming from Kansas City.
Hmm.
That could be an opportunity. Could be a place that if he does, if the ownership group likes him and he likes, and he likes
Eric Bieniemy.
Eric EB,
Hmm.
then it could be still a match made in heaven, right? Watch Josh Harris's press conference. Didn't seem like he's kicking Eric Bieniemy out the door, right? Maybe he wants Ron to do it. I mean, maybe he wanted Ron to do it at the time. But EB is still right now with the Washington Commanders. Now, of course, will he apply for other football jobs? Yeah, we heard already been rumors about him going down to Atlanta, right? Different
Hmm.
places like that. But again, me personally, I would keep this guy in the organization, allow him to just do what he could do at least one more year
Indeed.
underneath OG. I
I think
believe
that's
that.
it. I think EB being in the fold changes the draft strategy. I think there's a lot of things that we can point to, but like I think that makes the draft strategy a little bit more different if
Yeah,
he and for good reason and for good reason. So it's gonna be an interesting couple of weeks, man. I know we're gonna figure out something about this GM situation within the next week, calendar week. I'm pretty sure. And then
yeah,
shortly thereafter, after they get their hands on a couple of coordinators, they need to interview because each week of the playoffs is going to release a new group of coaches to be interviewed, and they'll do their due diligence from there once the infrastructure of the organization is set up and find the best candidate from there.
yeah. They definitely want to make sure all the positions are filled, make sure all the spots are good. Put his analytical team in and let them do what they do, go to work, right? And so that's one of the things that we're looking forward to. As you mentioned, we do have a lot to talk about. Stick with us here on All Burgundy and Gold Everything as we continue to provide you updates on the Washington Commanders through podcasts. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast, to our YouTube
Our
channel, to our
YouTube channel.
Facebook channel, Facebook channel. Make sure you hit all those things. Again, we're here for you guys, and we want to talk Washington Commanders football. We're going to talk Washington Commanders football for the next several days and weeks, because right now that's all that's anything that's important, right? Everybody want to see what is the Washington Commanders going to do. Are the Washington Commanders going to get Jim Harbaugh? Or hey, will the Washington Commanders talk to Nick Saban? Now we learned today Pete Carroll is open, but he's staying with the organization. Could the Washington Commanders woo Pete Carroll over here to Commanderland? It's just a lot going on with this team, and I like it because it's not negativity. It's not bad stuff. It's not talking about a cruise ship. It's not talking about women. It is talking about what this organization and what this team is trying to do with the number 2 pick over the draft, with the number 2 pick in the NFL draft, and how can they continue to touch base this community once again.
And just put a good product on the field, man. So I'm excited, man. I'm excited to see what goes on.
Definitely, man. That's it for us tonight. We just wanted to give you an update on the Washington Commanders, the head coaching search, as well as the football operations search.
I'm sorry. Listeners out there, please, as the events happen, as the GM gets hired, as the head coaches get hired, as we know what this looks like, leave your comments on our Twitter page. Leave your comments on our Twitter page at ABG Everything, ERRY Everything, and let us know so that we can shout you guys. We can have a discussion right here on the podcast as the weeks go by. We want to hear from you, so please chime in.
We definitely want to hear from you. We want to know your thoughts, right? What are your thoughts on the GM? What's your thoughts on the head coach? What's your thoughts on maybe Adam Peters do become that guy, right? Him leaving for Washington. What's your thoughts on that, right? I had a thought. Adam Peters leaves. He comes in, and what if Kaepernick comes over with? I'm just throwing stuff out there, right? Washington Commanders definitely won't do that. But again, it is something to look forward to. It is fun to be a Commanders fan right now and seeing the rebranding of this organization. I don't want to use the word rebuilding. I'm gonna use the word rebranding because some people don't like the word rebuild. Jonathan Allen don't like the word rebuild. You want to make sure that this process is going to another level. And again, as he said in basketball, NBA, trust the process, right? We as Commanders fans, are gonna have to trust the process and trust that the Washington Commanders and Josh Harris and his group is going to do the right thing. But Mo, that's our time for tonight, man.
Tell the listeners where they can find us at, man.
They can find us here, man. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Play. Just search All Burgundy, All in Gold, everything. That's tweet us at ABG_everything. Hit us up on IG at ABG_everything. Also like our Facebook page as well. That's All Burgundy and Gold, everything on Facebook. Check us out. Give us your thoughts. What you think about the Washington Commanders? What do you think about Josh Harris's team? What do you think about the Washington? Where can the Washington Commanders go here in the next few months with the number 2 draft pick? And what will the Washington Commanders be able to do in free agency? Stick around with us here for the next couple of weeks. We're going to talk about the Washington Commanders and their free agency pool. Who should stay and who should walk? So we're going to have a good panel discussion on who should stay and who should walk in the Washington Commanders organization. Make sure you tune in. Once again, man, you've been listening to the All Burgundy and Gold, everything powered by the Urban Sports Scene and Fox Sports Radio 96.9 FM and 1340 AM for ages. You dig? Ladies and gentlemen, good night. Peace.